Good afternoon and welcome to the GIBS Flash Forum. It gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome one of our favorite CEOs from Vodacom, the Group CEO, Mr. Shameel Joosub. Shameel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Morris. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Shameel, as we were talking earlier, we reflected on your leadership journey starting at the dawn of our democracy in 1994. And of course, many years later in 2020, where I'm sure like most leaders in the world, you are being challenged to reflect on the big question about profit before purpose. And we'll get into more of that as we reflect on Vodacom. Where I'd like you to start off with is just share with us what have been your key highlights in the time that you've been at Vodacom.
Morris, can you see me okay?
Absolutely, see you just fine.
Yeah. I started before my 23rd birthday at Vodacom, and by 26, I was managing director of the Vodacom Equipment Company, having created the whole handset and device business for Vodacom. By 29, I was running the entire commercial part of the business and being at the center of the success that we saw in the growth of the base and so on. And then by 33, 34, I was running the entire South Africa. And then off I went to Spain to go and run the Spanish operations. And then I was called back to become the group CEO. My stay in Spain was supposed to be for 3 years. They got cut down to just over 18 months, and I was called back to come back and take over as group CEO. So it's been a long journey, but a very exciting one, I must say. Having been one of the founders and having been very much part of the success. And seeing the company grow in all kinds of different directions. So, yeah, it's been fascinating.
Absolutely. Talking about your business, oftentimes when people think about Vodacom, we think about just handheld handsets, and we don't really have an appreciation about what the breadth and complexity of Vodacom. Of course, we'll come to the geographic expanse, but first I'd like to talk about the various capabilities and, of course, some of your new and exciting partnerships.
Sure. I mean, I think the company has over the years expanded into many different areas, and I think right now most people don't realize. I mean, we have 117 million customers across the continent, including Safaricom. We operate in 6 markets, and we manage the operations for Vodafone in Ghana now as well. It's fascinating because we have very big businesses of course, in mobile. In every market that we operate in, we're market leader. We have fewer markets very, very well capitalized. But financial services has become a huge business for us, with more than 53 million customers across the continent now. It's going to generate this year close to 20 billion of turnover, with a margin of about 9 billion rand contribution to profit. So it's become, I'd say we're the largest fintech in Africa, and growing all the time. So it's been quite impressive in terms of the growth rates that we're seeing. And even in South Africa, we now have over 12 million financial service users, and that's been growing quite nicely as well. Grown over 400% in the last 3 to 4 years, and generates now about 2 billion of revenue and over 1 billion rand of profit. So it's become a really interesting part of the business. But we're also in music, we're in games, we're in video, so in entertainment in general. We're in IoT. We acquired a company called, or bought into a company called IoT.next. Nexio is 51% held by us, which is managed services in the enterprise space. We've got companies that create agricultural platforms called mezzanine, and all the stock solutions used by the clinics in South Africa and a lot around the continent comes from this mezzanine company. And then Xlink, which provides the POS devices for many of the banks, also is ours. So there's quite a few different businesses that we're involved in.
Yeah, you know, the kind of numbers that you talk about, I really struggle to wrap my mind around them. So you're obviously operating at a different scale. And I can tell you now, whether you're talking about the total contribution, let's say financial services, which is where I come from, of 9 billion rand, or the South African version of R1 billion, I can tell you there are many competitors in the pure financial services space that salivate thinking about their organization having the potential to generate that kind of business. So we know when did you start your financial services business? So we can get a sense of how far you are in your growth journey.
Well, I mean, it depends how far back you go, but it started in Kenya probably 12 years ago now. Quickly spread to in Safaricom, and then obviously quickly spread into Tanzania, and now it's prevalent in all our markets. And then of course in South Africa we've managed to grow it quite nicely as well. We started off in insurance, and yeah, you know, in the last 4 years it went from loss making to over R1 billion profit. So in South Africa alone. So it's been a journey, you know, in terms of how we've created the different services and so on. And I think what's more exciting is obviously what's going to lie ahead and where we see the future of financial services going forward.
So on that, talk to us about how your relationship with Alipay, part of and the Ant Financial Services strategy, is going to ramp up your capabilities in this regard.
Well, I think the interesting part, if you haven't seen it, it's interesting to download to look at the Alipay videos and so on, and to understand it better, or to download the PayTM app, which is in English, so you get a better reflection of or understanding of what this is and the capability that this platform provides. But if you can imagine a lifestyle platform where you do everything from your phone, where you pay, from where you lend, from where you shop, from where you save, from where you invest, and that's the capability that this platform brings to us, and it's quite exciting in that regard. So you know, we currently we're very happy that we managed to secure the partnership with Ant Financial, and that they've got over 1.2 billion users. But the capability of the platform in the form of payments, and so you'll be able to pay anyone through QR codes, from the mom and pop store to person payments to paying any type of merchant. But also a lot of the merchants coming on. So, you know, everyone from Pick n Pay to ShopRite to Takealot, we'll be trying to onboard all of these in the next couple of months. You'll be able to browse, you'll be able to shop by category, from clothing to shoes to groceries to whatever it might be. So you'll shop from within the app. We'll zero rate the app as well. You'll get pop-up advertising. You can view the goods. You can watch a video on the goods. You'll be able to borrow money to purchase that, you know, those goods. You'll be able to pay off things in installments. You can send money or send food vouchers or send gift vouchers to all people. If you're booking an Uber or movie ticket, you'll never leave the app. So it's quite fascinating when you see the quality and the capability. I mean, we went to China, we went all over the world to see which is the best tech available. And even though we've got M-Pesa, which is hugely impressive, it just pales in comparison to the capabilities of this platform. And therefore, we decided to introduce the platform into South Africa, where we haven't introduced the M-Pesa platform, learn from that, and then take it to the rest of our markets.
So for my instance, once upon a time when we all could still get onto an aeroplane and leave the country, I did spend some time in Shanghai and Beijing, and especially last year. And I did manage to experience the platform. Of course, I couldn't use it on my own device. So the people that I was traveling with who were Chinese themselves were showing us how everything you do, public transport, anything, like everything happens on these platforms. So I look forward to the revolution that this is going to create. I want to acknowledge a comment by a guy called Nitesh Ramatar, who says the Alipay partnership is a game changer when it comes to platform thinking, ecosystem, and network effects. So clearly that's quite exciting. I wonder if you could also reflect a little bit around some of the work that you do. You started talking about in the healthcare space, and then also, of course, the amazing work that obviously you now entered into a partnership with Discovery on the healthcare side. And then you've always been in the space of education and how your education platform is helping to fill a gap during this time, particularly for public school children who aren't able to go to school as freely as private school children, for example.
So I think that the interesting thing for us, and maybe just a bit of a reflection, I think with COVID, it gave us a chance to really prove, and live our purpose, which is, to connect for a better tomorrow. But essentially, I think we stepped up very well as a company, and we've provided multiple solutions from, providing health workers with phones to the partnership with Discovery for virtual doctors, to providing big data analytics to government to help them what the efforts around tracking and tracing and models around the spread of the virus and so on. And we've done that across our different markets. So I think that's the one part. In terms of actual innovation in the space, from a health perspective, we have a company called Mezzanine, where essentially a lot of the clinics, so 3,100 clinics in South Africa, use our stock solutions as an example to control their stock. We have central health repositories where you can store customer data and be able to access it from anywhere. And that's we're using across the continent. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and so on have adopted our solutions. It's been quite interesting in that respect. And then, of course, in the space of education, and then there's of course been the virtual doctor platform that you mentioned with Discovery, where what we decided to do was to partner with Discovery to bring virtual doctors to South Africa, specifically from the perspective that it could help with COVID. And between us and Discovery, we decided to fund 100,000 consults and then to extend it further after that. So that's been also been good, but also to give to learn from it. So post COVID, we can also look at whether we create permanent products in that space. So that's gone down really, really well as well. In education, we do a lot. We've zero rated over 1,000 sites during this time. But also, as part of our commitment in our social contract, we decided to, before COVID, to zero rate all universities, all schools' portals, so that you could have schools and universities could have access to the portal. And then we've also provided e-education in partnership with Microsoft, where you can do virtual classrooms through Microsoft Teams and so on. And that's proven to be hugely successful as well. And then we've created hugely subsidized data bundles and so on that we've made available to universities and schools to be able to take advantage of it.
So when you look at that, obviously you're starting to paint a picture of the pervasive role that Vodacom is playing. I'm reminded of listening to Ellen, not Craig, talking about when he started Vodacom way back when. he remembers reading an article, I think it was in 92 or 93, which said that this thing is overplayed, this thing called mobile businesses, and at best it will peak at 250,000 users. and today, I mean, that just pales into significance. Given the influence that you're starting to have on the various platforms that you're describing, how do you and your management team then think about your role in society?
Well, I think the big part for us is really establishing a social contract across our markets with government, helping them to achieve their goals, but also really driving part of what we see our role as being is driving digital inclusion. You'll remember that you know, our ambition back in those days was all we wanted to do was make it possible for every South African to have an access to a cell phone. And in that context, we created prepaid, not just for South Africa, but for the world. So I don't know if you know that, but it's a South African innovation, prepaid, and more important, and also a Vodacom innovation. So, you know, I think in that construct, what we now want to look at is how do we democratize data and how do we make it possible for everybody to have access to data, and that no one should be left behind. So that's the context of what we're trying to achieve, and you know, in that respect, we're connecting 3,100 schools currently today, where we provide connectivity and smartphones, and we have this vision that every child should have access to a tablet. But also, you know, rural connectivity. You'll see one of our recent partnerships has been with Loon, where we now put base stations in the clouds on balloons. And, you know, again, a fascinating one that came from one of the visits to Silicon Valley. But it's these type of partnerships that, you know, we try and leverage off so that we can take coverage to remote places and so on. But we also see our role as driving financial inclusion. And we wanted to make it possible for you to invest as little as a rand. We've coined a new phrase, which we call nano. Nano finance, nano loans, nano financing, nano investments. So you must be able to lend as little as 5 rand, or to invest as little as a rand, or to pay, you know, as you know, for things that are, let's say, less than a rand even. So I think you know, that's the context of what we're trying to achieve. But we also see that we have a role to play in saving our planet and reducing our emissions and so on. So that's another key part of our strategy. And then finally driving you know, for gender diversity, diversity in general. But also we see that as a key part of our targets and our goals. And to that end, you know, we sponsor and support the Gender-Based Violence Center in South Africa and work very closely with them. And we have a number of apps and so on available that we don't like to talk about publicly, but you know, if you subject to abuse and so on, we've got ways to hide the apps and so on, so that you can consult and reach out for help and these type of things through the many products that we provide.
Absolutely. So talking about the environment, Shameel, you there's so many different points that your answer is so comprehensive I could go into. So let me pick a less contentious one, the environment. As you know, some people are a bit confused about the 5G technology and what this will mean for their health and as a consequence for the environment. Do you have a view and about that, and how can you help the community in general understand the value of 5G when it does come, and why we shouldn't be as concerned as we are?
Well, I think there's, I mean, you know, let's just say you've got the World Health Organization, and you've got multiple universities around the world doing research all the time but the World Health Organization, and there's a specific organization that's been created for checking out any health-related issues on any telecoms infrastructure, and that forms part of the World Health Organization, and effectively there's no reason to be concerned on 5G. It's just another mobile technology that's out there. Of course, you have to take the necessary precautions, and in terms of basically not building sites on top of right on top of people and so on. But there isn't any health concerns as such, that we have to be concerned about. Just the normal EMF parts that we normally comply with in that regard. I think what 5G brings is it brings a near real-time experience. It makes things like telemedicine even more possible. Just being able to turn your head in real time is what 5G will give you. So that latency is removed that you would normally get on say 3G or 4G and so on. It also gives you the ability to emulate what you can do on fiber. So I think, in a country as big as ours, 5G will give you the ability to reach many, many more homes and much quicker than you could do on a fixed technology. One's quite excited in terms of what's possible with 5G and what it enables. And I think whole industries will pop up based on these new technologies, as did with 4G, right? Today, if you look at the number of apps that you have on your phone and so on, remember, a lot of these things weren't possible before we had 3G and 4G, or they weren't possible at all. But so with it, as the speeds have gotten faster, the ability to do more from the phone or your PC or your laptop or your iPad becomes a lot more doable.
So I'm going to start going into some of the questions. There's an anonymous attendee. I think he's still on 2G. He's using my original phone, the 6310. He's asking about quality and connectivity in townships, rural areas being largely disregarded and undermined. I'm not sure which township or rural area he's talking about, but let's go with his question. How do you hope to correct that, particularly during these times of online learning and work from home?
Well, I think, South Africa is a big country. And I mean, today we connect 99.5%, 96% on 4G. But essentially, you want 4G coverage everywhere. The way to correct it actually is one of our difficulties have always been access to spectrum. What we're doing right now is we're fudging it as operators. What we need is lower band spectrum, the 700, 800 spectrum, which is currently held up by the broadcasters, and where South Africa has been over 12 years delayed in issuing. That will then give us the ability to reach more people. And I think that becomes a lot more interesting going forward, but also gives us the ability to do more. And remember, the problem with 3G today is when there's a lot of load on the network, the cell becomes smaller. So your coverage can actually disappear because of it. It's important to get 4G technology out there, and in time 5G technology, which is actually better data technologies as such. And therefore, I think spectrum is crucial in doing that. But every year we have, a couple of hundred sites that we set aside specifically for rural coverage, so that we continue to build out. I mean, we're at 96% 4G coverage of the population now, and we'll continue to extend that so that it reaches everyone.
So please remember us in Stanger, because we don't have appropriate 4G technology there. So in KZN, I go there in December, and we really would appreciate some 4G tech there. Just punting. We've got a whole range of questions. So I'm going to ask, we keep it sharp. And so going to Travaran Govender is interested about, when will you ever consider developing a data platform, much like a bureau, but for a holistic single view of customer?
Yes, and we're currently doing that today. So we've We now have a team of about 42 people that just work on what we call big data and robotics process automation. And we now deploying that a lot more into various areas. We use it to to determine where do we build the next space station. We use it to, we've just created a product called Global Recommender, so we can create what we call the next best activity. And today we sell 60 to 65% of what we sell today is all personalized to what we call the segment of one, which uses machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we've been one of the most successful telcos in the world, if not the most successful in doing this. And it's hugely beneficial. So the abilities and what we learn is just fascinating. But even robotics process automation, is become quite fascinating. We've taken, so example, insurance claims used to take 5 days. It now takes us 5 minutes. So that, that's the kind of gains that you can get from it. And we're currently building what we call the 360 view of the customer. And of course, with the customer's permission, we build a digital profile of the customer and then create different opportunities for us. And I think the Alipay platform will give us even more capabilities in that space. And yeah, so we see that becoming, becoming bigger and bigger as we go forward.
So Nitesh is concerned about the impact of global platforms like yourself, worried about potentially cannibalizing or leaving the little guy behind. What's your view of this? In particular, is interested on, do you have any plans to create a more stakeholder value approach, and what might this look like?
Yeah, so I think, platforms like this also give you the opportunity for small businesses to commercialize their products beyond the area. So a couple of things, the platform that we'll be launching in the Alipay platform is a two-sided platform. So one is got all the consumer benefits and so on. The other side is the merchant part. We effectively, small merchants will have the ability to take loans from us. And we already have introduced Vodacom. Now we're going to introduce, next one is going to be like a business advance, where effectively you can take a small loan, say of 30 grand or 50 grand. And we have the ability to do daily repayments so that you can pay back a portion of that from your takings every day. And we see this as, and also using basically telco scoring and building our own scoring mechanisms, which is what we do today on some of our airtime advanced products and so on. And we see that as a big opportunity to create a lot of success going forward. But also a small vendor will be able to sell their products way beyond their catchment areas by simply going on and adopting a mini app or putting their products on. It will also provide geolocation so that you'll be able to sell your products through the platform itself. And it will be zero rated, right? So you can almost commercialize your products for free. So, we see, and that's what Alipay and Alibaba did. And if you've heard Jack Ma speak before, it was very much about the small vendor. And that's why we think this is a very exciting partnership.
And even for me as a customer, I remember ordering a product sitting on the Great Wall of China. And then 2 hours later, I arrived at my hotel, the product had been delivered. So it was just unbelievable. So one of my favorite, if not my favorite MBA alumni, Avesh Inderjeet, says that Vodacom has adopted the EXO, exponential organization way of thinking. From this investment, it's obvious that Vodacom sees the world changing rapidly and exponentially. What's Shameel's thoughts on this, and what does he think about disruptive technology, particularly in the telco space? Clever people today, hey, Shameel?
Very much so. Very much so. Some good, very good questions. Look, I think disruptive. I think firstly, it's incumbent on all of us, and you'll know this from your MBAs and so on. I think as leaders, you've got to look at exploiting your existing businesses as you explore new ones. So the exploit and explore, or what we would call the ambidextrous organization, I think is extremely important. My belief is that you've got to engage in these new technologies. You've got to be part of it. You can't be left behind. And I see it strongly in what I call build, buy, or partner. build in the core and always stay abreast of technologies, buy where there's some new tech and you have the ability to scale it like we've done with IoT.next. I mean, this company was in serious need of a capital injection. And now, you know, after putting in money, I think in the next couple of years, it'll be $1 billion company, within the next few years. So, you know, it's bringing it and understanding that tech and then bringing it and being part of it. So I think it's important to be part of all this disruptive new technologies and embracing it, and then partner, where I call it 1 + 1 = 5. Where the sum of the parts, as I put it, give rise to a bigger whole. And, you know, if you can combine your efforts, and you'll see we've just done that with AWS, where, you know, we have our own data centers and so on, but the coupling of our data centers and our capability and connectivity together with AWS just gives us a very good proposition that we can take into enterprises. So I think we shouldn't be scared of it. We should embrace it. And, you know, even now with crowdsourcing and so on, the abilities and the capabilities that can provide even to an organization becomes really interesting. One more thing I'd say to you, that as you look forward, one of the things that we're seeing a lot of success on is hackathons. I must tell you, it's quite fascinating when you look at, you know, what we do is we bring all our engineers together and we basically, you know, ask them to, or we create a hackathon. We normally just take the entire, this year we're doing it virtually, but we throw out a whole lot of sleeping bags at Vodacom. And essentially people form themselves into teams, and the best teams win some cash. And we then take their product and commercialize it. Fascinating what your own teams can come up with, given the, you know, creating a competitive environment and then just different people forming into teams. And it creates such a nice culture of a can-do culture, which is just fascinating.
It's talking about, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
Sorry, and then I think another part is really what we're also looking at is doing more in terms of, ideation, innovation, and so on, you know, through partnering with some of the big organizations internationally and creating our own innovation hubs locally, where people will be able to come and develop products and services, and then use that as an opportunity to bring it onto our platforms. Because I don't think you can innovate everything yourself. You know, you're also good to pick up with young new techs coming in, support them, and help them to grow and make some money in the process.
I'm hearing lots of innovation. I hope Avesh is happy with that reply, and we'll come back to talking about innovation shortly, especially looking at that San Fran bridge behind you. In the meantime, one of your former alumni called the Red Vodacom team, Ashley Ramnarayan, is really interested to understand about how you prioritize your investments. How does Vodacom ensure that there's a balance in the investment and the core business of a network continuously receive the necessary investment for it to remain world-class?
Yeah, and that's always a tough one, right? Because if I'm honest, every year, if I left it to the teams, they'd be asking for at least 50% more capex. The difficulty as a CEO, and for that matter, the CFO, is that you've got to come up with the right mechanism and the right return. So you've got to look at your return on capital. You've got to look at what those investments are going to do, and you've got to make some tough decisions to be able to do it. So, you know, and I think, you know, it always comes down to that, because at a certain point, when you over-invest in your current business as well, you don't necessarily, you get very little incremental, let's say, improvement in performance in the short term. So it's important to strike that right balance at all times, and that you're putting enough money into new as well. And I think, but there's also opportunity as I think going forward. One of the big things that I'm driving at the moment is more sharing. sharing between competitors in what I call the non-competitive parts of the network. Example, today we share towers, but we don't necessarily share. We each have our own containers. We each have our own security. We have our own batteries on site. And if you go deeper into Africa, we have our own fuel. You know, you've got 4 fuel trucks coming to service the sites. You've got security guards at the sites. So there's definitely opportunity to do more from a sharing perspective, but also cloud provides you with the opportunity to create a shared infrastructure instead of replicating and building your IT again and again and again in each country to create more shared infrastructure. And I think you've got to balance the two, create some shared parts, which also gives you the ability for your small markets to have the capability of your big markets at a fraction of the cost. But then secondly, it optimizes some of the CapEx spend, so you can pursue some new parts. And you've got to ring fence and put a certain amount of money aside to say, this is what I want to invest in you. Otherwise, you'll just continue to focus on the existing without being able to create new channels.
Talking about competition, Tebogo Maile has got a whole range of questions. They really center around Cell C's activities and Telkom Mobile and Telkom Liquid, a combination of what do you think that means for Vodacom from a competition perspective on the one hand, then on the other, is there an opportunity for you to engage with ICAS and say, but these players are not using their spectrum, couldn't we utilize their spectrum? I'm not sure if that's even legal and how that would work, but I'm just honoring Tebogo, and I'm gonna see how you navigate some of those questions.
Well, I think what we have done is we've created what we call spectrum security because of the delays from ICASA, and we've basically engaged with the smaller players. You'll see there's a very close relationship between Rain and Vodacom in terms of us buying a lot of capacity and so on from them, and really empowering Rain to a large degree. The same with Liquid. We're doing, we've done a deal with Liquid on 5G. To be honest, I think if I'm honest with you, I think it's disappointing that we need to do that. We should be getting the spectrum from the regulator. We are engaging with the regulator. Hopefully spectrum auction comes soon. But as a company, you've got to provide, and it's always important as you think about this and you think about your businesses going forward, always remember if something is not happening through the normal channel, your job as the CEO, CFO, or senior management is to create certainty and diminish and reduce those risks. And that's why we've done some of the deals that we've done with. Disappointing from the perspective that, our country, our government, our regulators should be providing us with this capability, and I think if you think that we were one of the first countries in the world to launch 2G, if you think we created prepaid for the world, if you think we're one of the first countries in the world to launch 3G, and then you start to see that 4G we're falling behind, 5G we haven't, spectrum hasn't been allocated, then one feels disappointed because we have the capability, we have the skills, we have the talent, but we also need the tools.
Do you know why? I mean, Brett also wants to know why. Why do you think they have dragged their feet on this issue of spectrum?
Well, I think we've had too many changes in ministers over the years. The current minister is obviously trying, her damnedest to get it out. But I think we've had too many changes, too often, too much wanting to do different things. We had our overall plan, as a country, but then people were going off and doing other things that weren't necessarily linked to our national development plan. And I think it's also important to get the strong alignment, which we've now gotten, under President Ramaphosa. But still, the spectrum needs to be allocated. Again, there's talk of delays and so on, which is not encouraging. So, and these are some of the difficulties that we have to deal with as business.
Now, obviously, I'd be remiss if I talked to you as a CEO of one of the largest companies on the continent without asking you to reflect on our current global health pandemic, COVID-19, in terms of the work that you've done, in terms of maintaining the quality of work, enabling people that work and live from home, enabling critical services, facilitating e-learning, disseminating of public information, data insights. I wonder if you could just share with us, maybe not so much the things that you have done, Shameel, but what informs, what motivated you to get involved in such a comprehensive way, number one? And number two, what are the kind of trade-offs, if any, did you and your leadership team have to make in making this kind of comprehensive response that we have seen from Vodacom in respect of the COVID response? Firstly, an externally driven COVID response, let alone what I imagine you must have done for your own employees. So what drives you as a leadership team, and what kind of trade-offs did you make in the process of arriving at this outcome?
Well, I think what COVID did was really test some of the beliefs. You say you connect for a better future. You say you want to establish a social contract with government. Now's your chance to prove it. And so it required us to step up. And put society first. And I think in a number of ways, we were, one of the first companies to obviously step up in terms of contributions that we've made to government in various different forms across our footprint, whether it's the phones that we gave to government, or whether it's the telemedicine, or whether it's the, where we just get straight cash. And I think it really provided us with that opportunity to really step up, and I think that was key for us. So we looked at it from various perspectives. Our employees are mainly still working from home. Today we're sitting at about 90% of staff still working from home in what's been probably one of our busiest periods ever. With traffic having grown 96%. We upfronted investment to say, look, people are going to be working from home. There's going to be a dependency for, on us, and we need to step up. So, we spent about 2.5 billion in the last 4 months, making sure that we've added sufficient capacity onto the network. The same with education. We stepped up and said, look, we'll provide cheaper rates, and so on. We've given better pricing to the 2,000 smallest towns, or poorest towns, and so on. And I think it's just given us, the ability to do that. How's it impacted us? Short-term profitability, definitely. Especially, so give an example in M-Pesa, in a number of markets, we've zero-rated the, person-to-person transactions. That's come at a huge cost to us, and it's taken us negative in some countries in terms of the results. But we thought it's the responsible thing to do, and government reached out to us, and we stepped up and we said, okay, we'll help. And I think it was important to look at it. The other thing that we've done is, as we've stepped up against society, we've also said, how can we help? But also, where are the opportunities around COVID? So we've taken a dual approach in when it comes to helping employees, government, hospitals, schools. There's an onus on us as a citizen of each country which we operate in to step up. But there's also a part where you can look at how you can commercialize some of these opportunities. Work from home is an example. Put the capacity in, give people better rates, make sure you personalized it. So you also land up, if you approach it from the perspective that you have to do these things on the one side, and you have to play your role. And so I think we've stepped into the crisis as opposed to stepped away from the crisis, if I can put it that way, to look for the opportunities around it, to say, okay, people are going to work from home. Education is going to be done from home. Yes, we're going to make sure that it's affordable for people and the students and so on, but it's also an opportunity, right? Yes, you're going to have to put in the capacity, but maybe once we've given, it helps us to, those people will stay with us beyond this period. So huge amount of subsidization, but I think these type of crises don't come around, all the time. So I think it also acts as a measure of how you've stepped up during this crisis, and that's did you live your purpose when you were actually asked to live your purpose? I think is the important part.
Talking about purpose, I'm sure you can imagine, Shameel, that as a business school, we get all types. And one of our alumni, two of them actually, one of them is very strong socially oriented. So I'm going to be asking you a socially oriented question.
Sure.
It says, as CEO, you're ultimately responsible. This is from Christo now. I remember you, Christo. So if Shameel is not happy with your question, I can always withdraw your MBA certificate. As CEO, you are ultimately responsible for all things Vodacom, with the current pace of business, the pace of digital disruptions, and constantly changing economic landscapes. How do you manage staying on top of things? And how do you strike a balance of all things work, life, and health?
Well, if I'm honest with you, and you'll always hear life balance and so on and so on. One of my former chairmen said to me, he said, you're either going to be a good family man or you're going to be a good CEO. And although one tries to find the balance between the two, you do make sacrifices. You don't get to these jobs without making sacrifices. It's just the reality. And I think it does take a big piece of your life, and I think one needs to accept that. But you also need to be passionate about it, and you need to also find time for finding some of that balance, or at least trying to create some of that balance. But
yeah,
it doesn't come, guys. It doesn't come without sacrifice, and it doesn't come without basically without a lot of hard work and commitment. I mean, there's many nights where you're working until 10, 11 o'clock at night, so it's not a type of job where you say, it's 5 o'clock, as we say, it's chalet tate, it's now time to put your pen down and do what it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't.
So it requires you to also have purpose and commitment to that purpose. So possibly this connects with what Shreshini Singh is asking, which is the UN declared the internet access as a human right. Organizations like yourself and your competitors, the guys down the road in that yellow color, I won't mention them on a call with you, according to Shreshini, are producing super profits. And what does this dominance in profit and market share mean for your customers and smaller operators, respectively?
Well, I think, important to always remember that as a business, you've got to make a return. If you don't make a return, you can't continue to invest. So if you look at the level of investment, when you look at these companies like us or MTN or any other telco, always look back at how much are you putting back in and how much are you reinvesting and how much are you creating the new and so on and so on. I think that's extremely important. Telcos are very much about capital investment. So, when you start to try and fragment a telco and create many small players, there's no country in the world that has 10 network operators. It's a very expensive game. You have to put capital in. And therefore, if you're going to decide to be a telco, you better have deep pockets, is my view. What we try and do is, from an empowerment perspective, we do a lot. I mean, you'll see we a level 1 BEE provider. Now you'll find critics are saying, but you don't have 30% black ownership. Actually, the fact that we don't have 30% black ownership is actually beneficial to the country, because it just means that we have to over-index on everything else. For transformation, the BE scorecards have been brilliant for transformation in South Africa. Today, 74% of Vodacom is black. It wasn't always like that. In terms of management, in terms of all levels. More than 60% of the ExCo is black. But what we do for our small suppliers, I mean, we've got everybody from Samsung to Huawei to Transform, to our shops, to our retailers, to our, to our dealers and so on and so on. So it's just meant that we've had to over-index. We spend 450 million in skills development annually in South Africa. So, you have to play your part, and you have to do your bit in terms of being able to make sure that all different elements of society are brought in. But you also have to be able to make a return to be able to do it. And I think, and you'll see also that we continually bringing prices down, because you also have the responsibility to play that role. Even though you have exchange rate problems and equipment gets more expensive and so on and so on. But, it's different things to manage. You're just going to manage it in the best way possible.
Lovely. So Mpiwa Ndumo says, how is Vodacom playing its part in enabling the manufacturing industry in Africa? And what are their findings in solutions such as IoT?
So I think, we're not so much in the manufacturing part, to be honest. I think where there is local suppliers, we try and obviously support them as local phone producers or local phone assemblers more. And in that event, we are trying to do it. I think from a manufacturing perspective, and obviously we try and support local business as much as we can. And wherever we can buy local products, we try and of course ensure that we do. So that's a big part of our play, but also creating local tech. You take a company like IoT.next. This was South African technology that if we didn't step in, or someone else didn't step in, would have probably failed, to be honest. It was a startup. We went in, put in a lot of cash, worked with management, left management 49%, and we kept 51. But today it's growing quite significantly. And the turnover has grown probably 300-400% in the last year. And that's the and that's taking South African tech. And it's not manufacturing in the true sense of the word, but it's software manufacturing, if one can use that word. That basically now we have, and we're now selling our services as far afield as California. We've got Germany and the UK and the Vodafone entities all very excited, and we're signing them all up to sell our tech. And that just becomes awesome, because that's a nice story, a South African small company.
Lovely. I think we underestimate the value of that. And as we're coming to a close, I do want to ask a question that Zaid and I are really interested in. Zaid Ayob, you mentioned, for example, that more than 90% of your employees have been operating from home at a time when your productivity has been high. How have you managed to maintain such high productivity whilst the people are working from home? And how do you think this is going to change the future of work within a Vodacom context?
Well, I think for us it was multifold, right? Firstly, it was making sure first and foremost that our employees were safe. So that has always been paramount in Stalees. So that's the first part. And I think we've delivered on that. We've also made sure that we have continuous engagement. So I do a weekly fireside chat with the entire company, and we have a chat and so on, and they have certain updates on what's going on and these type of things, so people stay connected. We've even now introduced fun. We had Riyad Musa entertaining all the staff the other day virtually. So so we're now kind of finding more and more ways to be able to do it. That's just to keep people motivated during this time. But what we've tried to do is keep the teams focused. You've got outcomes. You have to make sure you have to deliver it, and force and make sure that all the managers, the team leaders, the executives, and so on are connecting constantly with the teams and are clear on what their goals and targets are, and they still have to deliver it. So we made a plan to ensure that, and that includes our contractors, our outsource partners, and so on, that we're all working towards the goals that we set out at the beginning of the year. So regardless of COVID. it's come sometimes with its challenges, but we're managing through it. One of the challenges is, of course, being power and connectivity. So, we've given our staff, example, huge data allowances to be able to work from home. But at the same time, so we've provided them with the tools and these type of things. Yeah, we're trying to manage, we're trying to manage through it constantly. We have a lot of reviews with the teams and so on to make sure that everybody is staying abreast and on top of on what they need to do. And I must say, I've been very proud of our team because, in terms of people being responsible, staff being responsible through this period. And that's been very encouraging. What it does for the future of work, we see an environment where it will change. We'll move towards and evolve to a work from anywhere kind of solution. We think that it'll probably evolve into 50% of people on site, 50% off site type of thing. We already work, to a large degree like that. We look at the outcomes. So, but I think that's going to be. It's going to be. I think we need to improve on the tools, and that's what we're currently working on. I say if you can do an agile stand-up completely virtually, post your tickets and all of these type of things without, and the smart board is seamless between the two, then it starts to work even better. So those are the kind of things that we will do. Maybe we're a little bit better organized than other companies because we work a lot virtually today with Vodafone.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to start pulling us to a close, read some comments, and maybe ask you a final question at the end. So Keshni Morar, who is a GIBS alumni as well as a Vodacom alumni. I don't know if you remember her.
I remember. I do.
I don't know why she left. Go back. And she says, I'm a Vodacom alumni, and I can say that Vodacom always has the nation's best interest at heart. And you can see that through all of this, the initiative they had in and the role that they played before COVID. So it's not surprising that they have leveraged their network to connect us through this pandemic. And then another question from Elmo is that, well done, Shameel, on building a world-class business. And thank you for making us proud of our ability to innovate as a country and lead by example. And so there's a question there. I'm going to ask it, but you don't have to answer it. The question is, do you think that financial inclusion will be linked to digital inclusion? And what role do you think you will have in this exciting transition? And then there's a whole host of questions around, in hindsight, what lessons have you learned? What mistakes are CEOs making? But at another time, we can ask this question. For me, I want to conclude with the bridge. What does San Fran mean for you? And what does it mean for Vodacom? And what could it mean for South Africa?
For me, it means innovation. The first time I went to the Valley, I just got so excited about the amount of things that are going on and the level of thinking that from innovation hubs through to, meeting with all the big companies and just getting all excited in terms of all the different solutions and products and so on. And I think, so that's what it stands for. For me, it really, and that's what I'm missing because I like to go at least once or twice a year to the Valley and meet with the different companies to see what's going on, to keep an open mind. So, my message to you, keep learning, keep developing, keep thinking, read, watch videos, watch podcasts, continue to evolve your thinking. Because, you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. And I think as we get exposed to things, it generates ideas. And then you can bring it back and create a local context sometimes for that. And it might not be the same thing, but it just generates different ideas and give yourself some time to think and to see what others are doing too.
Shameel, what a wonderful conversation. Thanks to everybody who helped me host this conversation with Shameel. And thank you for continuing to support GIBS in all the work that we do. And thank you for all that you do, not just for South Africa, but many countries on the continent. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for having me.